A well-known musician's been badly injured after being attacked near his home in Manhattan.
And now the community has come together to support him. CBS 2's Kieran Dillon reports.
New York-based Japanese musician Tadataka Uno is a beloved member of the local jazz community. The 40-year-old is a renowned pianist and composer.
On September 27th, Japanese pianist Tadataka Uno, who has played with Jimmy Cobb, Roy Hargrove, and many others, was jumped by teenagers in New York City while leaving the subway station at West 135th Street and St. Nicholas Avenue. This attack was believed to be racially motivated, as his assailants were calling him Chinese, Asian, and other things while he was attacked. He was trying to leave the station and trying to go around the group, but he was attacked due to other complications. And this assault left Mr. Uno with a broken collarbone and multiple bruises, and he may not be able to play the piano ever again. We have gotten the privilege to interview and talk to the great Jerome Jennings, a drummer, his friend, his close friend, and the person who graciously set up a GoFundMe for Tadataka Uno.
My name is Jerome Jennings. I'm a musician, I'm a drummer, I'm a educator. I work at the Juilliard School, take pride in history, performance, and yeah, I'm glad to talk with you guys.
Cool. So, can you describe to us what happened to Tadataka Uno, the whole situation?
What happened was he was attacked, as you know, on the subway, leaving the subway. I can't remember the date at this point, a few months back. And us being friends, his wife, my wife, me and him, his wife called me after it happened. And I wasn't able to pick up the phone. It was very late. And she called again the next day. And, I learned what went down, him being attacked coming out of the subway. And, yeah, immediately, I thought, well, he's going to need help. We spoke. He sounded very groggy and like extremely sedated. But I spoke with his wife, and I suggest that he get help. They get help, because as we know, our medical system is pretty much behind the beat, per se, to use a musical term, and pretty primitive in terms of how it protects its citizens and how it supports, I should say, its citizens. So, I started a GoFundMe. He agreed to move forward with it. He's a very prideful person. He doesn't like handouts, as I understood that, but knowing what the issue was, I knew it would cost a bit of money for him to get fixed up and get back to being himself. Him being the sole breadwinner of the family, right? So that's what happened, and people showed out. I think I asked the public for 25. Initially, it was 20,000, but I said, let's do 25 just in case. Your bills, they get out of control. As we know, like, everything costs when you're dealing with the medical, our medical system. Ride in the ambulance starts at like $1,500. Everything in the hospital costs money. If you go to the emergency room, it's crazy. So I wanted to make sure he would be cool. Once I started the GoFundMe, like literally 12 hours later, it was like up to $75,000. I was like, wow, okay. And it started getting a lot of attention. And I was happy about that the community came together for Tata. And that's pretty much in a nutshell what happened.
Wow, wow. And I have so much respect for that because you took the initiative to make the GoFundMe, and there's so much love in that. And that's the type of camaraderie that's been present in our community, of course, playing this music. But there's so much love in that, and I truly love that you did that. And also, I'd like to ask, how do you feel about the situation, particularly as a black man who plays black music? How do you feel about the situation? Because that comes with a lot. It's a really heavy situation, as you said. So,
Yeah, I mean, I felt a few things. I mean, initially, I felt really bad. I felt bad because I thought about, where he lives. Like Tada went out of his way. He's from Japan. Like he born and raised in Japan. He went out of his way to learn this music the best the best way possible. The way that you learn any art is to immerse yourself in the culture around the people who the art comes from. You understand? Not just learning the licks, not just learning the lines in your insular comfort of your home or comfort of your friends, but going out and getting around the energy of the people, right? Because the energy transcends, like the energy transcends sound. Yeah, for instance, like yeah, trap music might not, Dizzy wasn't using a MP when he produced his music, but the energy is still there. And Tada clearly understood that. The conditions are very similar, right? Where this music comes out of. Tada understood and understand. He asked the questions. He asked questions. He didn't assume. He asked questions. He used to ask me a lot of questions. So for him to immerse himself around black people without fear, by the way, without fear and without any preconceived notions, right? Brought on by the propaganda of news outlets and so forth that we know. It's something that I always held dear. I always held that dear in my heart for him and his family, and particularly him, because it was a very traditional home. Whatever he, whatever moves he wanted to make, his amazing wife, she was on board. Um, so for this to happen in the neighborhood, right? I felt I felt really bad. I kind of felt ashamed until I thought it through. Because it's people who look like me who attacked them. But then I had to think we have to understand what conditions people of color are dealing with on a daily basis due to systematic racism. And what that does is that can be used to pit us against each other. It's happened before in history during the Rodney King uh, riots and uh, I'm sure during the Chinese Exclusion Act, there was a riot in 1871 in L.A. where it's one of the I don't mean to get dark, bro, but it's one of the most uh, mass lynchings in the history of America, and this happened in Chinatown. But there were white vigilantes and Mexican vigilantes, right? Who fell into the rhetoric of the country excluding, this is before the actual act was signed, but that xenophobia was here then, right? It's here now, and we have to understand that because of the miseducation of people and people looking that old American tradition, our tradition here of looking for a scapegoat, right, to blame hard times on. Tada fell victim to that, and those brothers who initiated the attack are pawns in this thing, right? So we have to understand that, and we have to look at it from a systematic standpoint. This is where my thinking I had to regroup my thinking, because the first thing you want to do is go out with a bat. You can't do that. And that's something that those are like the emotions I felt. Then I felt super bad. I felt like, what is this dude gonna do for money? Like, he plays piano for a living. You understand how precarious that this career can be, right? Your pop, you seeing it. And I'm thinking, like, how's he gonna make bread? So then I was overjoyed once I saw all of the love he was getting. And now I'm relieved. Now I feel relieved, like, okay, he's gonna be all right. He's gonna be cool. But I still want him to be able to. And also I don't want him to be traumatized when he sees a group of black people walking in his direction. Young black men, is he gonna be nervous now? You see what I'm saying? I don't want him to be traumatized either.
We also got the pleasure to interview two Asian American musicians who play black music and are from the New Jersey/New York City area. Those two being trombonist Peter Lynn and alto saxophonist and educator Julius Tolentino.
My name is Julius Tolentino. I'm a saxophonist, an educator in the New York, New Jersey area. And yeah, I'm a Filipino American, born here in the United States. My parents, moved here in the 70s. And, I play and teach the music that I love, which is Black American art form. And yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Peter Lynn. I am a Taiwanese American jazz trombonist. That's usually how I try to introduce myself to people. I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, but I was only there for 1 year. But I grew up myself in West New Jersey, where actually I was able to have Julius Tolentino as a teacher in Region Jazz Band back when I was in high school. So, I went through the education system here, as well as the jazz education system here through William Patterson and Rutgers. And I also am, besides a musician, I also have my own company called Yardbird Entertainment, which does audio, video productions, as well as a myriad of other things. So I'm just really happy to be here today to definitely help, go through these issues and to definitely, provide that space for everyone to really share their thoughts. So thank you for going
So,
over.
like I said, my parents were first generation. And, I think this is kind of a common thing with Filipinos that, my parents they were, pre-Americanized. Like, in the Philippines, everybody loves everything from the U.S., you know what I mean? And they speak English there, they teach English in school. So when we got here, they really wanted to just kind of conform to, of course they have their culture and their family here, but I didn't really learn how to speak Filipino. I just kind of, our native language, Tagalog, or, different dialects. But I heard it in the household, and I was immersed in that culture and the food, but I never learned how to speak Filipino. I don't know. They just didn't want me to, I think, have an accent. I think that's kind of common with a lot of Filipino parents. I've seen that with people of my generation. But yeah, I guess, I grew up being one of the only Filipino kids or kids of color in general in my, elementary school years. I can remember the other kid whose name was Carlos, and the teacher would always confuse us. He was Hispanic, and it was just, I would be called Carlos, he'd be called Julius, and it's just funny to think about now. But as I got to high school, my high school became a little more diverse, and by the time my brother came up, there were a lot of Filipinos in Bloomfield, so he had a lot, like a very close knit of people that were of Filipino descent, like first generation here too. But it's an interesting dynamic growing up, Filipino American and playing this music. And in ways, I've had this conversation with Peter before, actually, kind of being on like in the middle, you know. Um, and you have your white friends that play the music, and you have your black friends that play the music, and sometimes you hear things being neither of those things, you know. Sometimes you hear things in the middle, you kind of hear things from both sides. um and it was just an interesting dynamic. I that's just an insight that I do appreciate having, actually. um but trying to think of you know as far as like coming up in the music, you see things and you hear things, and it's always different. It's always hard being kind of different than everybody else, doing the thing that you're doing. um doesn't mean you have to do it better than everybody else. Sometimes it does. um but also, there's benefits to having a different point of view as well. And I just love now, so many people from all over the world playing this music. And it's just in the last, I don't know, I wouldn't say 5 years. It's just amazing to see all the different diverse cultures, you know, playing this music. There's been people playing this music all over for many many years, but I just feel now with all the climate and everything that's going on, the diversity is just being celebrated more. And especially in the jazz community, it's just we're all brothers and sisters in arms. So it's just beautiful to see and be a part of. And Not gonna tell my whole story here, but I really got into jazz education in the last 14, 15 years of my playing career. I still play a lot, but nobody's playing a lot right now, but you know what I mean. But but the education thing is really taken over my life, and I really love it. I really love talking about the music and teaching it to the next generation, and just seeing them do great things for the music. And it's just I feel like it's definitely my calling. So it's something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Julius, because I actually had the chance to interview Julius as well on some of these topics. And um, as I'm thinking about a lot of these things, and as my, it's such an interesting question. How's it like being Asian in a jazz space? Because that barely gets asked. So when you get asked it, it's like, the time to process is much longer for us. And I've been realizing that, it's okay to not have an answer is also what I've been realizing, because we're figuring it out continuously. I think that's just something that is nature of how we are viewed inside the music. So as I do this, I'm also taking notes, because I feel like it's good to keep a running list of like a lot of the identifiers of what it's like to be an Asian American inside the space of society, but also within jazz. So I'll speak first on what it was like to be Asian in spaces where usually not Asian, right? So I grew up in a predominantly white Italian neighborhood. There was a smaller percentage of Asian people growing up in elementary, middle school, and high school. Not the same as Julius. I wasn't the only one. However, I was one of a few. And there were some other Chinese people, but at the end of the day, you all get grouped together as a monolith. And that's something that I have experienced even to this day, just being grouped with like other Asian people, even though there is a clear distinction between East Asian and Southeast Asian. You know, being Filipino is definitely not the same as being Taiwanese. Um, so when you're growing up and you get all these stereotypes against you, a lot of these stereotypes being that you're automatically smart, you have small eyes, and a lot of the typical like making fun of Asian people kind of things. um, you start to ingrain a lot of those stereotypes into the way that you live. So for example, um, I wanted to counter a lot of those stereotypes by not being Asian. So when my parents like taught me Taiwanese when I was really young, actually. So I knew it when I was super young, but then they just switched to English primarily once I hit school. And I think it's the same reason that Julius is mentioning, which is to prevent this sense of like being the perpetual foreigner at school. And so that you can just blend in with the other kids. And actually, a lot of my friends, they went to Chinese school and I didn't. I told my parents I didn't want to. I was like, I don't want to be Asian. I remember saying that when I was younger. And I just wanted to, I ended up just playing basketball with my white friends on the weekends, or like, going to sleepovers, and everyone else was at Chinese school, learning Mandarin. So it is pretty, it was definitely isolating experience. And I think music was my outlet. I do believe that, in a way to express myself, where I felt like people did not judge me necessarily based off of how I looked. I also felt like I was kind of going against the grain because everyone else was trying to become a doctor, engineer, and for me, I just didn't want to fit in that. Like, I didn't want to be categorized as that kind of Asian. So I ended up really trying to take it seriously, music as much as possible. And eventually I came to really love jazz when I went to college. I knew, I had the education, going to a lot of the summer camps, and obviously doing region jazz with Julius. Obviously, it's a very educational aspect, but I feel like my love for the music didn't really come until college, and that's when I was surrounded by other people that didn't care. All of a sudden they didn't like judge me based off of how I looked. It was like more because of the mutual love of the music. And I think that's also where we tend to mask our kind of feelings about being Asian by trying to say that like it's about the music, or the music is this, so therefore I don't have to be Asian. And I also lived like that for a long time, but now with all the recent events, as well as like some really self-discovery, I'm slowly coming to the realization that it plays a huge part into why I play this music, and not just like I don't play this music just to play it. There's deeper reasons for it, and so I just wanted to mention that as I sort through my thoughts of just the whole dynamicism. But that's just the basic gist of what it's like growing up being Asian.
Yeah, with all the craziness right now, I mean, obviously you feel scared for your life a little bit. I mean, I've never ever felt that way really before. Um, it's definitely a feeling that I'm not used to, and it makes me even more uh, feel more empathy and more passionate about all my my black friends, seeing what they have to deal with. Not that this is even close to what they have to deal with, but just to kind of get a little taste of, to have that fear of like, having people really dislike you for the color of your skin, you know, uh, with all the things that are happening now. It just makes you think a little differently, and I can't imagine, you know, having that, for your whole life, day one, and just having it be at a much higher level than what we're getting a taste of right now. So it's just so sad, and it's definitely scary. Sometimes you think, oh, I'm in New Jersey, I'm in this part of the country, and things are cool, but I hear all kinds of stuff that's, it's just so sad to see this is happening all over, our country. So it's definitely fear. It's made me think. I haven't really spoke about it at all. Really, I'm dealing with some family things right now. So I haven't really. I'm just been engulfed with that right now. So I haven't really even had a chance to really think about it too much. I'm just engulfed with what we're dealing with, on a personal level right now. So
Yeah, that's yeah, it's really heavy. I think when these things happen, it's not like these things were not happening before, because I also keep a list of anything that I see that doesn't get reported. I try to keep a list of these attacks and killings. And this has happened continuously since March, and before that, even since the beginning of when Asians stepped into this country. So I understand the shock that comes with the event, and I try to be cognizant of that. My wife is from China, and she and her friends are always living in this kind of perpetual foreigner fear of not only not being accepted but also being attacked. And so that fear is continuous. I think it's just going to continue happening. So I have spoken on this numerous times this week, because I think a lot of people think that I just tend to speak up more about it. But at the same time, the reason I speak up about it is because I'm also processing. I'm also trying to learn all the different perspectives. And again, being Asian is not a monolith. So I'm sure there's a lot more different perspective than mine. However, I think at the current moment, how I'm feeling about that particular situation and all the response that's happening to it, I think it's enough. We've had enough words. We've had enough. This whole thing about stop hate. It's like, how do you really stop people from hating you? You can't tell someone to stop hating you. I think it's just, to be honest, I think it's a little useless. The more that I think about it, because it's really deeply ingrained, not only in the way that the government talks about Asia as a whole, like, for example, the whole economic war between China and the US, this whole Red Scare situation, but it's also ingrained in the educational culture of, like, ignoring us in the history, ignoring us in the holidays. I never grew up with, like, Lunar New Year being celebrated at school. And as I think about those things, I think this is like this event can help to flip that conversation in a positive way. And I think that starts not necessarily by saying, stop hating us. I think it starts by saying, let's continuously uplift and bring out the stories that needs to be told about Asian Americans here in this country, because we don't even know about ourselves. Like, I didn't know about myself. I think it's deep how this goes. I've been running a weekly Clubhouse discussion on Asians and jazz every Friday at 2 p.m. And it's me and Victor Lin, another great educator that Julius knows. And it's crazy the amount that, like, other Asian jazz musicians have been pouring out recently on Clubhouse. I've never heard that side. Like, I grew up with some of these musicians, and I've never heard their story and how they felt. And now I understand that there's a commonality between all of us, and we're slowly figuring that out, and it feels really empowering to do so. And I think if more people understand that this is a thing and not just some kind of made up, like, all of a sudden, it's not like all of a sudden people just started hating us. It's been ingrained in just the way that society has been. It's been masked by policies. It's been masked by model minority myth. It's been masked by a lot of different elements. And so, so I think that it always brings me back to, like, art and music and why that's so important, because it's one of the only ways that people will recognize us for the humanity of the situation, and not for the because of the color of our skin. You know what I mean? It really brings out those voices that need to be heard. So that's what I have to say about it. But it's a terrible situation, and my heart goes out to the families and everyone involved.
Oh, I don't, man, I don't know if I have the answers, but but Peter said about this hate now movement. I agree with him. It's like, something more has to be done than this little hashtag. It's and Peter's right. It's so ingrained. The systemic racism it goes super deep. So it's like, and education has a lot to do with it. I mean, I'm an educator, so that's the first thing that comes to mind. Is education and having you know the real history being taught in schools, and you know more than a Black History Month, or celebrating these different holidays. All these kind of things need to take place in the school, and I'm fortunate to be at a really great community school, and we're working, trying to find ways to do it right as well, and we're very far behind when it comes to talking about changing the curriculum in history, how it's taught in the schools, and and that's on this side of the country. So it's like, it just needs to be talked about more to younger people, and to it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot. I'm always an optimist. I mean, I see what's happening in our music. I say our music, American music. This is it's everybody's really history here. If you live in the United States, that's what jazz music is. So I just I'm optimistic. I don't know. I have an answer, but I'm always going to speak up when things when I see moments like that you're talking about, Ace. I never ever stand for it, whether it be against me, or for other a friend, or just somebody I don't know. And that's important. Just do what you can to speak up on about it, and you know just let people know that's not cool. No matter, I know when you're in high school, and sometimes it's just a different thing. There's like a lot of jokes are made, and I remember being there, and it's just a different time now. And I think especially people your generation are more open to you know what's right and what's wrong, and the reasons behind it. So it's definitely important to speak up. And like I said, education. That's all kind of comes to mind right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Julius that a lot of it does start with how we're raising the next generation and continue to do so. Um, I was thinking pretty hard about like what is something that we can do, and when I say we, I mean like a collective AAPI community. Um, and it's really hard because you already have issues within the AAPI community that we can't even get together and agree upon certain issues. And like, whenever there is a rally, it's usually like one community, like it's Chinese, it's Korean, it's Japanese, it's hard to see those intersectionalities and try to like really think of concrete, like what can we do examples. So I'll start out with that. But that being said, when I was thinking about it, I really believe in the local change. I feel like that's where we can really start to see things within our own community. Because it's hard to like think on the bigger government level where they already are, already policies are always like determining how normal people think about us anyway. Like it's hard to conquer those particular aspects unless you have those particular connections. But if I think more locally, it makes sense to have those, like Julia said, have those conversations as much as possible, not only within your Asian community, which I believe is super important as well, but sit with like your white friend across the table, sit with your black friend across the table, and really try to hash out like what they really think about you. You know, we barely, like you said, Ace, like, you know, we barely talked about what it was like being Asian growing up. You know what I mean? We just accepted that we were Asian. That's it, right? So I think having those deeper discussions is super important. I think the other aspect is two particularly bad stereotypes about Asian males and Asian females. So Asian males being too feminine, and then the Asian woman being hypersexualized. Those two aspects add a lot to the fire, to the fuel of like how people treat us in general. That's one thing. The other aspect that I was thinking about is kind of like so besides that particular stereotype, I think it's just really important to hash out a lot of those feelings that we're kind of going through right now. It's hard. I'm thinking so many things at the same time that like I said, it's hard to not be you know, specific about what we're trying to conquer, right? Because we're trying to find out why they hate us. You know, like we still don't know, right? Like I think a lot of people are confused with that aspect. So it's first trying to figure out the core of the issue. You know, what is it that we're trying to fight against? And that's why these discussions are important, so that we can kind of like express to each other how we're feeling, how we can try to figure out what is things that we can do collectively to fight against the grain of what's normal. But I think we're, you know, it's hard when we're all like trying to fit within a mostly white context of, you know, of society. You know, we're always trying to like shoot for the stars. We're always trying to like, you know, get to the next level. We're always trying to like, you know, do better in life, make more money, you know, those things. Like we don't even have time to process what it's like to be Asian, because, you know, a lot of these things are so hidden. So I think the discussions is highly important. Just the same, I always look up to the larger Black community when it comes down to like how we deal with it. And I think if we can all really band together and stop with a lot of the inner, like smaller, oppression Olympics, you know, that often happens. Like I saw one post, I'm just going to put this out. I saw one post where there, you know, someone's like, don't expect us, Black musician said, don't expect us to show up when these things happen, because there's a frustration within the Black Lives Matter movement that a lot of Asian people have not been supportive. And that's very true. I'm not going to lie, you know. There's a lot of particularly East Asian communities that don't believe in Black Lives Matter. And so when these things happen, you know, what was to be expected. But again, that's, you know, what I'm saying is let's think on a more larger issue, like what is the core of what we're all trying to get at, you know? And a lot of it is fighting white supremacy, to be honest. So if we can all try to think more in that way, I feel like we can get more done, instead of squabbling over like, well, you know, I remember this particular instance where Black on Asian crime or Asian on Black crime, you know, a lot of that stuff, it's all leading to the same issue, in my opinion. So I'll wrap that up.
Well, we have to have some type of understanding, and we have to educate ourselves. One thing that Ace said that where we go wrong is we expect our institutions to educate us on things that we have to take care of and educate on our own at home, and be taught. America is a very interesting place, and the concept is great. I love to say that the concept is amazing. It boasts that to be a melting pot. But the thing is, when you have a lot of cultures that come together, right, that's a beautiful thing. But if those contributions aren't taught, right? If you don't touch on these people's, each culture's contribution, right, to the American way of life, or the art that comes out of America, that's absolutely considered to be America's contribution to the world, you're doing the citizens of the country a disservice. Asian Americans, whether it be Japanese, Chinese, Taiwanese, from wherever, South Pacific, have contributed a lot to our country, a lot to this country, right? Through blood, sweat, through art, through so many different ways of contributing. But I keep seeing this in the news. I hear it from my friends. Asian Americans don't seem like they don't feel like they're seen. And them not feeling like they're seen, what we're seeing with this violence and what we're seeing with the disrespect that's happening is a byproduct of them feeling like they're not being seen. It's like, okay, you're not being seen, because what we're seeing happening is happening to people who are disrespecting. And the way one way of disrespecting people is not seeing them. You know what I'm saying? So what we need to do is we need to come to, just to get back to your question, what we need to do is we need to educate ourselves, understanding that we're all in a boat, in a similar boat, right? Of racism. We all we deal with racism. We deal with not being seen. Hell, Asian women are in the same bracket, low pay scale as black women, African American women. So we need to come together. We need to understand these facts, understand what was happening with China during the 1900s, and when this country was founded with trade and opium and all of that. We need to learn this stuff so that we can understand that we have a lot of commonality. Praise our differences, celebrate our differences, don't run from our differences. Understand Asian people worked on railroads for menial to no wages at one point. We have to find commonality, but we also have to celebrate our differences. But understand that we all are pawns in this game. We're all here as pawns, not rooks, not queens, not bishops. We're pawns, and we have to see that. We have to understand that.